The one I'm talking about is this guy right here from Hollywood Gun Shop, and I'm looking it up in Handloader's Digest. This particular copy was copyright MCM LX VIII. That's 1968. Now, the catalog itself is pretty extensive and covered all of the really cool tools that were available back in 1968 in the day. It's very extensive. Now, the one we're addressing here specifically from Hollywood, the micrometer dispenser, right there. Now, this guy, $29.95. If you're looking at some of the other pricings on here, I mean, you can get yourself a lead dipping system here for $4. You can get something else for $10. You can spend $17.50, whatever. So you can see that the Hollywood Gun Shop has a product that's running basically double what everybody else's is. And why? Well, they're calling it a precision micrometer. So is it really that good? Actually, yeah, it is. If you compare that today to like the most expensive manual dispensers, I've carried Redding for a long time, and I've tried a lot of their match braid or bench rest type powder dispensers, and the Reddings are really very good. When you're using ball powder, they're going to be spot on like 9 times out of 10. But the most important thing when you are using any kind of a dispenser like this, or even if you're using a progressive reloading machine, you have to be consistent with the rate at which you are moving the mechanism. If you have gravity pushing or dropping powder into an open cavity, how fast or slow you go, if you vary, it's changing the timing. So if you go slow once and you go fast the next time, you just change the timing, and the amount of powder that it drops is going to vary. So if you're using a powder dispenser like this, now I have dropped now probably upwards of 50 powder chargers through it, just playing with it with a number of different scales, checking the weights against. I've got a Frankfurt Arsenal electronic one here. I've got an RCBS 1010 there. I'm going to get back to the Webster Precision oil dampen scale here in a moment, but I've also got another Redding scale back here. So I'm checking everything against each other so I know that I've got a very consistent powder drop through here. And I'm not one to drop powder directly into a casing. I like to weigh every single charge just to make sure it's spot on. But my confidence in this thing is built to the point where I don't really have a problem dropping it into the casing itself and then just seating the bullet. But this werewolf ammo project is sort of morphing. If you didn't see the earlier videos, what I'm doing is I'm using the Acura Bullets 230 grain Platinum Series round nose, and I'm dropping that into a Winchester nickel casing that's got a CCI nickel primer there in the bottom. Now, nickel, if you're not familiar with it, when you're at the range and you're picking up casings to take home and clean and reload, nickel will have kind of a shiny appearance to it. Hornady also does a black nickel that's not the silvery shiny stuff. Aluminum casings will have a very dull kind of silver tone to them. And steel casings could be silver. They're usually a dark. The stuff that's imported from Eastern Europe usually is painted and has a lacquer, and those are usually pretty identifiable. But nickel has its own natural lubricity, so you're going to notice if you compare that to just a regular brass case that is not nickel plated and a nickel plated case and put them through a sizing die one after the other, you're going to notice that there is a little bit of slickness to nickel. It also has the advantage of having some excellent corrosion resistant properties. A lot of the guys when I was working there years ago who would come into the shop because they've got a boat, they're going out onto the ocean, you need something that's going to have some corrosion resistant properties that's going to keep your shotgun from getting destroyed from the salt water in the ocean. So they would buy either Cerakoted or nickel plated. There was a number of manufacturers who have actually done nickel plated shotguns and other firearms as well that are specifically made to be out on the ocean in the salt water in the air. So having done this, and I'm very confident with it. I'm also using now the Webster precision measuring instruments oil dampened scale. Now this guy right here, again, I'm checking it against how consistent it is against all the other scales that I have around here. This is a very interesting deal. If you're not familiar with an oil dampened scale, now we use magnets, right? So if you drop something on a scale, the arm's going to go up and down, and it's slowing down quickly because it's using magnetic energy to slow that thing down. Now, didn't always used to be that way. You used to use oil in a pan. Earlier, I had a video where I was showing you one from Herter's that was a little bit of a reservoir that was kind of deep. This one is round and it's very shallow. And when you bought that, they would give you a bottle of oil that you would drop into the pan. Now, what's left in there probably dried up, I'm going to guess somewhere in the 70s. But the bottle is cool, and I keep it in the box with this just because. I also have, that was in that box, a check weight tin. Now, if you could catch the name on there, that says Pacific. Now, Pacific is not around anymore, but they are. They just have a different name. You know what they're called now? Yeah, Hornady. Pacific became Hornady. Now, this little tin, you've got all these little squares, and I just dropped a bunch of them on the floor. And they're all labeled, like this guy right here. That's a 20 grain check weight. And this little guy right here in this sort of pill-looking capsule, now those are they're hard to see. Those are check weights as well. They are 1/10 of 1 grain check weights. Boy, you talk about a precision type of setup when you're using 1/10 of 1 grain check weights to check your scale. These are some serious people about being accurate, and they've done a wonderful job with it, and it does work very well. Now, what I've got in here that I'm dropping is 5.2 grains of bullseye for my werewolf loads, and I've got my old school funnel, and I have 5.2 grains in the scale right now, and it was spot on. Now here, this is the Lyman All-American. In the current lineup, in the Lyman product catalog, you're going to see the All-American 8. The newer version of the All-American 8, which came, this is 50 years old, has 8 stations. This one has 4. And the mechanism here is very different. You're going to have like this cam over where the platform drops a little bit. And I like to take that and I'm going to give it a quarter turn. Now, the reason I'm giving it a quarter of a turn is I like my concentricity to be as good as I can possibly get it. So let's say I've got 2/1000ths run out because that didn't seat perfectly straight up and down. If I turn that a quarter of a turn and I run it back up into there, I just took out half of it. So now I've got 1/1000th run out. Now, for excellent concentricity, you want your ammunition to be less, it has to be less than 3/1000ths. Closer to 0 and run out, of course, is going to be the most ideal, but it has to be less than 3. And if it's down to 1 or 2, frankly, I doubt there's very many people who really shoot well enough to tell the difference when you're talking about that kind of run out. Run out shows up as horizontal dispersion on your target, or wind. It could be other things as well, but if your bullets are kind of sitting in there sort of crooked, it's going to see a different position looking down the barrel every single shot, as minor as that is, but that does in fact make a difference. So I'll throw one here. I just want to show you, because I don't have the oil in there, it's going to take a minute for this thing to settle down. Now, I could have put some oil in there, used something else, but the powder dispenser is incredibly accurate, and I can simply take my finger and slow it down. Now that, you saw me dispense that directly into the pan, and I've got this set at 5.2, and that thing is so slightly below the line, that's probably a half of a tenth of a grain. Nobody on the planet shoots a handgun. Jerry Miculek does not shoot a handgun well enough to tell the difference in 1/2 of 1/10 of a grain variation in any given cartridge. More than plenty accurate. How about that? Happy trails.